One dark day, two friends Asahi and Izumi found Kid lying on the ground. When they asked what happened, Kid seemed to be so shocked by the tragedy that he couldn't answer anything. Everyone has conflicts, worries, and old wounds that they don't want anyone to know, and so does Kei, our main character. After that incident, a year has passed as Kei tries to come to terms with his pain. It seems that he transferred to an all-boys school due to his mental trauma, which his previous teacher thought was a relief for him. Meanwhile, Kei himself believed that it was normal and that the wounds would heal after a few years, as if nothing had happened. And now, in the present component placement, he leisurely bought a can of water at the convenience store. After paying, walked out and reassured himself that everything was fine. Today will be a normal day like any other. After that, when he gets to school, Kei enters the classroom in a cheerful mood because he wants to share something with his friends, Izumi and Asahi. For the first time in his life, Kei receives a text message from a girl he doesn't know. Kid thinks that maybe this is a sign that a new life is coming to him. However, his friends think that it's most likely a man or a scammer, which surprises Kei, and asks how they know for sure. Izumi also adds that even if it's a girl, there's still a chance that she's a bad person, a honey trap, or something strange. However, Kei finds it hard to believe, so he shows his friends the girl's profile picture to prove that she's cute. Izumi then points out that the photo probably isn't hers, since it's normal to take random pictures from the internet. Asahi asks to borrow Kate's phone to look at the messages, then confirms that they're full of signs of a scam. Kate is a little disappointed, but Asahi reassures him that they've known each other since high school, so he only wants the best for Kate. That's why he says that not trusting innocence is a kind of virtue. Kate says that it shouldn't be called a virtue so easily, and besides, he feels depressed because all the excitement about this conversation has disappeared when he finds out the truth. Kate mumbles about wanting to have a girlfriend or something and be able to fall in love like a normal person. Asahi and Izumi listened, then began advising Kate that the online world can be truly frightening and suggested he cancel his mobile services. Asahi jokingly added that Kate should even cut off his home internet connection. Kate then asked if the internet had ever caused harm to any of their loved ones. And when he thought about it, he wondered how they knew so much about such things, including recognizing fake profile pictures. The two friends were silent for a moment and then said that they had only heard rumors. But in reality, they had experienced receiving messages and finding out that the sender was actually an old man used for scams. Kite asked if meeting people online was so dangerous. How could he meet girls? Asahi replied that there were many websites and he just needed to find someone who seemed trustworthy. Suddenly, Kate felt something pulling, and realized that his bag zipper was caught on the pendant on a girl's bag. The girl nervously apologized for the incident and Kate said it was okay. He pulled both straps to separate them, but the zipper of his bag broke. The girl apologizes again and offers to pay for it since it was her fault. Kate tells her not to worry, since it was just a decoration. He then says goodbye and walks back to his friends. Asahi compliments him on how smart he was, even though it could have been an opportunity to meet a new girl. However, surprisingly, Kate falls silent and sighs, saying that the situation really made him nervous. Asahi and Izumi are relieved to see him okay, and then tease Kate for not being able to handle awkward situations. Kate looks embarrassed, while Asahi and Izumi are happy that everything went well. The next day after school, Kate goes to his friends and says that he received another message during class, and they assume that it is definitely a scam, without even looking at it. Later, as the boys exit the school, they see a beautiful girl standing in front of the school gates. Kate recognizes her as the girl from yesterday. She is confused to see Kate and expresses her gratitude for finding him, since she had been looking for him, guessing that Kate might be a student at this school, but didn't expect to attract so much attention. Kate says that it's obvious, since this is an all-boys school. Izumi and Asahi decide it's better to leave Kate with the girl, so they leave. The girl apologizes to Kate about what happened earlier, but Kate tells her there's no need to apologize. Kate wonders where his friends went, then the girl reminds him that she has something else to tell him. The girl asks if she can borrow Kate for a moment since they're attracting too much attention. Kate agrees, and they go to a corner to talk. Kate looked closely at the girl and realized she was very beautiful. The girl says that she wants to be honest, while Kate secretly wishes he could date a girl like her. To his surprise, she suddenly confesses, saying that she fell in love with Kate at first sight. Kate is completely taken aback by this unexpected confession. She explains that after meeting Kate the day before, she couldn't help but think that he was the right person. Kate is confused because he doesn't know anything about her, but the girl replies that she understands that, and so she doesn't ask him to answer right away. She wants them to get to know each other. And if Kate still isn't interested in her after that, she'll give up. Kate's face turns red upon hearing that. The girl expresses her desire to start being friends, and gives him her phone number, saying that if he doesn't want it, he can throw it away. Cade felt embarrassed but took her number, thinking that his youth had finally begun. With this surprise, he was happy that he could finally have a girlfriend like he had dreamed of and could become a normal person. Cade thanked her for this, while his friends were peeking from behind the wall, guessing that Cade had just received a confession. Asahi was glad that they had quietly retreated earlier to give the two of them some space. Izumi said that it was because they were always concerned and watching for their friends' romantic opportunities. The girl introduced herself as Arisaka Tsubasa, a second-year student, and Cade introduced himself as Sato Cade. He thought that they could call each other by their first names. Tsubasa agreed and said that it was time for her to go home, otherwise she would miss the bus. She apologized for wasting Cade's time and hoped he would contact her. Suddenly, a child running on the road tripped Tsubasa, pushing her towards Cade. Tsubasa couldn't help but fall on Cade, but the sight brought back memories of Cade's mental trauma, making him suddenly unable to move. Tsubasa fell on top of Cade, and he could only endure the fall. She quickly apologized to Cade, but noticed that he was only mumbling incoherently, his eyes lost in fear. Tsubasa didn't expect Cade to react like that. While his friends, who initially thought he had just encountered a lucky situation, suddenly realized that Cade hadn't moved at all. They rushed over to check on him, and while Tsubasa anxiously called Cade's name, his friends came and introduced themselves as his friends. The girl explained the situation by saying that someone pushed her and she fell on Cade, and she worriedly asked if Cade was okay. Asahi asked if she was hurt, and Tsubasa replied that she was okay, and they checked and found that Cade was not hurt either, so she didn't need to worry and could catch the bus. However, Tsubasa didn't want to leave like that. But Asahi said that Cade probably didn't want to be seen after that embarrassing fall. Tsubasa thought that was probably true and apologized for not noticing, and decided to go home. Meanwhile, Asahi didn't want or expect Cade to have a panic attack right now due to the trauma. They were worried about Cade. So they helped him stand up and took him home, reassuring him that he didn't need to be afraid. But in Cade's mind, the image of the gym and his former teacher kept appearing, along with the haunting events that person had caused Cade, despite his pleas for her to stop. After that incident, Cade's friends were the ones who found him, and what they saw around Cade were his ripped pants and messy shoes, and Cade in a worse state, lying on the ground, his hand over his mouth and shaking in fear, his mouth repeating the word stop. They helped him sit up, but when asked what happened, Cade said shakily that he had been attacked by a woman. Back in the present, Cade's friends took him to a park and let him sit down to rest. They asked if Cade was feeling better, and Cade apologized for bothering them again. They told him that he wasn't bothering them and that he didn't need to worry about it. Cade begins to say that when he interacts with store employees or when he meets women, he usually doesn't feel any problems, which makes him think that everything is fine. He always told himself that he was a normal guy like everyone else, but now he realizes that he can't go back to normal, no matter how hard he tries. Asahi and Izumi are worried. They tell Cade that they don't think he's different from anyone else. The next day, in class, Asahi recalls that Cade hasn't had a panic attack since junior high school and it's been 3 years since they transferred to an all-boys school. He says that it's normal for Cade to want a girlfriend, and that he always thought everything would be fine for him. When they talk about girls with Cade, he always acts cheerful, talking about the messages he receives. But after the recent incident, Asahi wonders if Cade is forcing himself, or if they did something wrong. Izumi thinks that up until now, they did nothing wrong, and until yesterday, Cade himself thought that everything was fine. Izumi says that they can't help but try to protect Cade after what happened with that teacher. Meanwhile, Cade stands at the school gate, telling himself that he should act cheerful like usual to be a normal guy. He walks into class with a bright expression, says good morning to his friends, and says that there were no scam messages today. Asahi and Izumi notice that Cade looks cheerful and ask him if he called the girl he met yesterday. Cade replies that he hasn't called her but saved her number. Asahi and Izumi say that it's cruel, since he told her that they could start being friends, and now she might think that he rejected her. Cade feels guilty because he realizes that too. But he was worried that after he acted strangely the other day, she definitely didn't want anything to do with him anymore, and in the end he couldn't even say goodbye to her. Asahi and Izumi disagreed with Cade's thinking and thought that the worst thing was that he didn't send her a message if he was really worried. Asahi advised Cade not to think too much, just sending her a simple thank you message for yesterday would be enough. Cade thought that they were right. And he wanted to get to know Tsubasa better so that they could actually become friends, and have a normal relationship, to prove to himself that he could live like a normal person too. After 3 hours of thinking about how to reply, Cade composed an extremely formal and serious message to send to a girl. For the first time in his life. Tsubasa responded that his message was too stiff, but her response was friendly and said that she was glad that Cade wasn't hurt anywhere, because she was worried. A few days passed. Cade frequently texted Tsubasa. Then, Asahi came to ask him if he was still in contact with the girl. Cade said that it had been a week since they started contacting. However, to Izumi, it seemed that Cade wasn't as excited as he expected. Cade replied that he had been 5 times happier until yesterday, until Tsubasa asked him something. He showed Izumi the message where Tsubasa asked if they could meet after school. Asahi and Izumi were impressed by the girl's boldness in asking Cade out so early, but Cade was worried. Wondering if he would be okay with meeting her. Cade is still worried about what happened that day. And Asahi and Izumi also remember it, causing them to be silent for a while. After that, Asahi asks Cade if he wants them to come with him. Cade refuses, saying that who would meet a girl with a guardian. However, they are still worried that something similar might happen again, so they decide to visit the school nurse, Ms. Miyamoto, since she often gives good advice to students in need. Izumi asks Ms. Miyamoto if she knows about Cade's past, and Ms. Miyamoto replies that she was informed during the interview with Sato Cade's family. After that, Asahi explains the situation, that Cade recently accidentally bumped into a girl and had a relapse. Ms. Miyamoto can guess that it must be very bad. Cade says that thanks to his friend's help and reassurance, he is feeling better, but this is the first time he has had a relapse since entering high school, so he is quite surprised. Also, a lot has happened and he has just been asked out on a date. Miyamoto congratulates Cade, wondering how a strange situation turned into a date. Cade gets straight to the point, saying that he is wondering what he should do if the panic attack happens again. And that he also wants to try his best without running away from the situation. Miyamoto can see that Cade is really trying his best. Cade asks the teacher what he thinks about this and whether or not he should meet the girl again. Asahi and Izumi do not object to this, although they are still a bit worried, so they go to Miyamoto to see if there is anything they can do. Miyamoto asks Cade if he feels scared when interacting with other people. And Cade said that he didn't feel that way, as he was still comfortable playing soccer with others. When Miyamoto asked if he was afraid of girls, Cade immediately replied that he really wanted a girlfriend. Hearing this, Miyamoto didn't see any problems in his daily life at the boys' school, indicating that the panic attack might just be triggered by some conditions that reminded him of his trauma. After looking at Cade, Miyamoto thought that if he could trust someone and explain his situation to them, as long as there was an understanding between the two, things would be better. Sato Cade would feel more secure, but the possibility of him getting hurt was also high, so Miyamoto advised him to avoid any sudden contact. They couldn't let their guard down when the panic attack had just happened recently. Miyamoto didn't think it was necessary to lie and pretend that Cade had a cleanliness disorder, so he suggested that Cade could tell the girl that he was uncomfortable with close contact. He also mentioned that there are girls who like closeness, something Miyamoto learned from his experience working at a girls' school. Cade wondered if teacher Miyamoto was afraid of girls, but beyond that, he asked if telling others that he didn't want to be touched would make him too self-conscious. Since he wasn't a girl. Miyamoto replied that the logic that it was okay for boys to be touched was strange, and in a way, it also led to sexism toward oneself and others. Cade felt reassured by those words and was a little moved to agree that Miyamoto was right. Asahi and Izumi notice that Cade seems to be relieved. Cade then becomes more cheerful as he feels better, and with that settled, he needs to think about how to reply to the message. Asahi teases that it will probably take another 3 hours to think of a reply, and Izumi thanks Miyamoto for listening to Cade. As lunch break is about to end, Cade bids farewell to his teacher. Miyamoto calls him back and says that it's good to want to try, and that he'll cheer him on. Cade smiles at being encouraged like that. After he leaves, Miyamoto remembers how Cade responded about wanting a girlfriend, and recalls how Cade's parents said that their son had gotten up on his own and returned to normal. But now, Miyamoto can see that he's still not completely normal. Meanwhile, Cade arrives at the meeting place where he and Tsubasa had decided to meet the next day. Cade feels anxious because he was confessed to, meaning they could become a couple depending on his decision. He wondered if it would be rude to date Tsubasa when he was still unsure whether he liked her or not. In any case, he decided to follow Ms. Miyamoto's words that he was uncomfortable with close contact. Tsubasa walked over with 2 cups of water in her hands and said that Cade had arrived earlier than her. Cade replied that he came early because homeroom ended early today. There was a tense silence between the two. Then Tsubasa said that she had milk coffee and milk tea, and asked Cade which one he wanted. Cade thanked her but wasn't sure which one to choose. He was even more nervous because that meant he would have to touch her hand when taking the cup, and just thinking about it made him hesitate about whether it was okay to take the cup with such little contact. Tsubasa casually tells Cade to choose whichever cup he wants. Cade looks at the two cups and thinks about how his hand will touch hers when he takes the cup and whether it's okay. But when Tsubasa sees Cade staring at the cups, she apologizes because she thinks that both cups are the same color, making it hard to tell which is which. She starts looking at the edge of the cup to read the label. But Cade suddenly takes one cup from her hand. When their hands touch, both blush. Cade asks how much her latte is. She tells Cade that it's okay, and that she's glad he came to see her, even though she called him in such a hurry. That's Tsubasa's thanks through the cup of water. Cade looks at her smile and realizes that she's really cute, and that it's okay to touch her hand naturally. They then went to an arcade to play. And the two had a great time together. Tsubasa used to go to arcades often with her friends, and she saw that Cade was very good at playing video games. After that, the two went to a restaurant to eat, sat down, and started talking. Tsubasa wondered if it was okay for her to ask Cade if she was considered strange or unapproachable. Cade looked at her when he heard this question, because he didn't understand what she meant. Tsubasa further explained that she went to an all-girls school and didn't have any male friends, let alone a boyfriend. Tsubasa honestly told Cade that her heart was beating fast all day, and she was glad that he was easy to talk to. Cade felt the same way, because he didn't have much experience interacting with girls, and can only look a girl in the eye for 2 seconds before shyly looking away. Tsubasa was surprised to hear that, realizing that they were more alike than they thought. Cade's cheeks turned red after hearing her thoughts. And he asked why she thought he was a good match for her in the first place. He wondered if he should ask that. Tsubasa's eyes lit up as she shared her thoughts with him. She explained to Cade that when they passed each other and their couple straps got tangled, it was a rare occurrence, so it must have been fate. Hearing the word fate was something he didn't expect from her, but then he started to think about it. Tsubasa closed her eyes and remembered the first time they met just yesterday when he passed her. In her eyes, he looked like a prince, and she was impressed with the way he handled the situation with style. Hearing words like style and prince makes Cade definitely knows that Tsubasa is a romantic girl. Tsubasa gets nervous after saying those things and apologizes to Cade if he feels uncomfortable. Cade smiles at her and says it's okay. Tsubasa starts telling him how she finds him wonderful, kind, and full of life, just like the man of her dreams. But in Cade's mind, he knows he's definitely not that kind of person. Tsubasa continues to say that she wants to get to know him more from now on. And Cade wants to know more about her too. Tsubasa smiles at him and says that she is glad that they can talk about many things from the start, because she is not used to talking to boys because she is too shy. She adds that if she tries to show off now, she will be the one who will suffer later. Tsubasa is silent for a moment, realizing that she has been thinking about him more than she really is. But before Cade can respond, a few girls enter the cafe and wave at Tsubasa. The girls approach the table, and one of them points at Cade and asks if he is Tsubasa's boyfriend, then teases her because she now knows that the reason Tsubasa left class in a hurry today was because she had a date. Tsubasa blushes and immediately says that it is not, that they are still just friends. The girls continue to tease her, while Cade tries to act normal since it's hard for him to control himself or talk when there are so many girls around. One of the girls started introducing herself as Tsubasa's classmate, but when she saw Cade, she immediately recognized him. Tsubasa was surprised and asked if she knew Cade before. The girl agreed and said that she knew Cade because they went to the same middle school. Hearing this, Cade suddenly remembered the image of the teachers in the staff room gossiping about him, the rumors about him being attacked and calling him a victim. All the gossip about the victim, and the rumors about him applying to an all-boys school after the incident came rushing back to Cade's mind. He remembered standing at the door, facing all of that. While everyone thought that going to an all-boys school would be a big relief for him, Cade quickly returned to the present when the girl asked if he remembered her, since they were in the same class. Cade felt his mind go haywire as he was faced with so many thoughts at once. The girl recognized him and claimed to be his classmate from middle school. Who was she? What year was she in? And her face looked familiar, but he couldn't remember her name. All he could remember was the memory of the incident that caused him to leave school, and he accepted that he had been attacked by a woman in school. After that incident, he did not attend school for a whole year. Cade took a deep breath and apologized to everyone that he had to leave. He left the money to pay the bill and started walking out of the restaurant. Tsubasa is still confused and shocked by what happened to Cade. She stands up and asks her friends to help pay the bill, promising to pay her back tomorrow. Her friends reassure her and tell her to follow Cade. Meanwhile, the girl who claims to be Cade's classmate wonders what happened to him, and if the rumors she heard about Cade are true. Tsubasa ran after Cade to stop him. When she tried to hold his hand, Cade pulled away and yelled, telling her not to touch him. Tsubasa looked at him confused, and Cade knew that he had just ruined everything by yelling at her like that. He apologized to Tsubasa but decided to leave anyway. Cade continued running until he met his friends, and told them the whole story about what happened to Tsubasa. They weren't sure if Cade's emotions were in turmoil or not. Asahi thought that Tsubasa definitely had a special connection with Cade, whether good or bad. Meanwhile, Cade felt that the girl's face looked familiar, but he couldn't remember her name. Izumi pondered, who would have thought that Cade would meet his classmate from middle school, especially when he was with Tsubasa. Cade thinks about the whole thing that happened today and says that everything was fun until the girls came, but he's sure it would be even more fun if they actually went on a date. His friends assure him that he doesn't need to worry, this time it was just an unfortunate accident. Asahi confidently explains to Cade about the ratio between his uncertainty and his feelings for Tsubasa. He says that Cade's feelings are probably balanced between liking Tsubasa and uncertainty being almost equal. Izumi looks at Asahi with a questioning gaze, while Cade looks even more tense after hearing Asahi's theory. Izumi says that there's a high chance that the classmate Cade met in the cafe might have told Tsubasa about his past. It's possible that no one knows exactly what happened, but there are slight rumors that Cade stopped coming to school. Tsubasa immediately replied that it was okay, she was just concerned about him and wanted to make sure he was okay. She also said that her friends didn't think anything bad of him. Cade was relieved to know that Aya, the friend who recognized him, didn't say anything negative about him to Tsubasa. However, Tsubasa also asked if there was anything else that happened between him and Aya that she didn't know about. Cade thought about this, now that he knew that her name was Aya. After a while Cade returned home and saw a text from Tsubasa saying that she was worried about him and that she wanted to apologize if she did anything to upset him. He wondered if she thought he was weird. Because after all, if he left in a hurry without even contacting her afterwards, while she continued to be clueless, it wouldn't have worked. Then he texted her back and apologized for everything that happened. However, Tsubasa also asked if there was anything else that happened between him and Aya that she didn't know about. Cade thought about this, now that he knew her name was Aya, but that name didn't remind him of anything in particular. He replied to Tsubasa that nothing really happened, and he apologized for leaving so hastily that day. He also admitted that he had been rude to her friends by not greeting them. Immediately after Cade sent this message, Tsubasa replied that she was glad he had explained and hoped they could meet again to talk more comfortably. She didn't want their relationship to be affected by a misunderstanding. Cade felt comforted reading these lines, and even though he was still worried, he knew that Tsubasa truly wanted to understand and be with him. Cade heard the phone ring and felt panicked. When he saw that the caller was Tsubasa, he picks up the phone and hears her worried voice saying that she couldn't hold it in anymore and had to call. She asks if he's free to talk now. Cade's eyes light up and he immediately agrees, saying that he's in his room. Tsubasa says that she knows they just met recently, so she doesn't expect him to tell her everything right away. But she also says that he always apologizes to her, and that it's not necessary. He can be more relaxed. She asks if he thought their date wasn't fun. Cade immediately replies that he had fun, making Tsubasa blush and ask if they can hang out again. Cade blushes and agrees too. Hearing his reply, Tsubasa breathed a sigh of relief and said that they could talk later, as she was on her way home so she had to end the call. She thanked Cade for picking up the phone unexpectedly. Cade blushed and thanked Tsubasa for everything, then ended the call. He closed his eyes and lay down on the bed, his mind in a mess, unable to think clearly. Meanwhile, Tsubasa also felt that something was wrong at that moment. But she decided to keep two things in mind. Not to overwhelm Cade and to approach him cheerfully. She wondered if what she had done was right. But then the memory of Cade slapping her hand away when she tried to stop him came to her mind. That made her a little scared. But she still walked forward with hope, telling herself that she was inexperienced in understanding boys. Meanwhile, Cade couldn't stop thinking about Tsubasa and blushed. He wasn't sure if his feelings were love, and doubted that he could find the answer himself. Even as he asked himself this, he realized that the current situation was too complicated for him. He didn't know how to feel about Tsubasa, because he was afraid that if he suddenly revealed his feelings, he would become strange in her eyes. Then, Cade hears the voices of two classmates talking. They talk about how one of them just got confessed to, but he doesn't really feel it. The other says that it would be a waste to reject the girl. Cade realizes that he's in the same situation. And his eyes meet Yudai's. Yudai immediately asks Cade if he feels the same way. Cade replies that he really doesn't know much about love. Mitsuki, a friend who is known as a playboy named Kobayashi Mitsuki, laughs and calls Cade a late bloomer. Yudai is the name of the other friend. Cade asks them, for example, if a person gets confessed to but the girl doesn't want to date right away but wants to start being friends first, And then after a while the other person starts to have feelings. What should he do in that case? Mitsuki comments that this question sounds very specific and tells Kid to think of it more simply. The girl was the one who approached first, but now they both have feelings for each other. Kid realizes that it can be interpreted that way. Mitsuki continues to say that there is only one answer. The boy should thank the girl for waiting and confess that he also likes her and wants to date her. Hearing this, Kid blushes and his face turns red. Meanwhile, a friend of Tsubasa's named Momoka asks her if she is sure about Seto Kid. She can't help but worry because he knows Tsubasa's feelings for her but is still hesitant. Tsubasa explains that she herself told Kid that it's okay to be friends. However, Momoka emphasizes that Tsubasa probably wants him to give her an answer quickly to know if everything is okay. Tsubasa thought that maybe Momoka was right, because if the answer was no, it would be difficult for Kid to say it. Momoka told her not to think negatively, but then shockingly asks if Tsubasa is just a convenient person for Kid. Tsubasa denies, saying that Kid is not that kind of person. And she reiterates that she told him that they should meet again, and he agreed. Momoka thinks that it is not right for Kid to just passively react to what Tsubasa said. Now that she thinks about it, Momoka says that there are many guys like that. They will not take advantage of others' kindness but may tarnish the relationship. Since Tsubasa doesn't know much about this, Momoka suggests that if Kid still doesn't say anything when they meet next time, Tsubasa should ask him directly about his thoughts on her. Tsubasa is confused by Momoka's words. Then she receives a notification on her phone and guesses that it is from Kid. Momoka asks what he said. And the message says that it might be a bit sudden, but Kid asks if Tsubasa is free after school today. Momoka cheers her up, while Tsubasa thinks that there is a chance that he will reject her. Momoka tells her not to think so negatively. After school, Tsubasa goes to see Kid and he thanks her for coming. Even though he called her out of the blue. Tsubasa replies that she is glad that he invited her and that he can call her any time. She suddenly realizes that she really acts like an easy person. She asks Kid if he has anything to say. Kid looks around to make sure there aren't many people around. And starts saying that he is glad that she came to school to see him and that he also enjoyed the time they spent together. He liked the way she called him and wanted to thank her again for everything she had done for him. Tsubasa thought that the next thing he would say would be "but I'm sorry," while Kid really wanted to respond to Arisaka Tsubasa's efforts to make things work between them. Kid didn't expect to be able to say it so smoothly, but he realized that this was his time. And if he tried to show off now, he would be the one to suffer later. He decided to come clean that he didn't want to hide anything from her and wanted to share something. His hands began to shake. As he mustered up the courage to say that during his high school years, he had been the victim of an assault by a woman. As Kid recounted the incident from his past, Tsubasa fell silent for a moment, while he continued to say that he felt very uncomfortable being touched unexpectedly, and that was why he apologized for pushing her hand away that day. Tsubasa said that it was fine. But Kid was extremely scared to check her expression at the moment. However, having decided to make it clear, he added that, despite that, if she still felt okay with him, then he wanted to date her. Tsubasa called Kid's name. And when he raised his head with a pounding heart, he saw her calm expression. She said that she was very happy. Kid didn't expect to get such a reaction, and Tsubasa thanked him for telling her about his past. Kid felt relieved to hear that. Tsubasa then said that she had also been touched by bad people on the train, so she understood how he felt. Kid didn't expect her to share that. And she added that she was surprised to hear that this happened to boys. But she reassured him that it was all right. And that he didn't need to worry too much about it. As for his response to his confession, Tsubasa said yes, that she would be happy to date him. However, there was still a negative doubt between them about whether this was okay. Although they were both very happy at that moment. Kid and Tsubasa started calling each other by their first name. Kid smiled and called her Tsubasa. However, they both knew that there were people who, after becoming victims of bad events, could no longer ride the train. That couldn't be taken lightly, and it was unacceptable to ignore the serious damage that these wrongdoings caused. But for some reason, Tsubasa wonders why this makes her feel a little strange. Meanwhile, Kid goes to find his friends and announces that he's dating Arasaka Tsubasa. Hearing this, Asahi and Izumi are both happy. And congratulate him on getting a girlfriend. Kid says that he's worried them a lot about this. He thinks that he can finally enjoy his youth normally, though he still has to be careful not to rush things. Asahi and Izumi notice that Kid has matured, and when they're about to say something to him, the teacher tells Kid that he's on cleaning duty that day, and asks him to wipe the board. Kid goes to wipe the board, while Asahi asks Izumi what she thinks of Kid's improvement. Izumi comments that Kid doesn't look very excited, but they still hope things will go well for him. Kid seems to be acting a little strange, but he thinks it's because this is his first time having a girlfriend. He tells himself that this should be normal for a boy from an all-boys school and that he should be at the peak of happiness. He tries to convince himself that if a nice girl like Tsubasa accepts his past, then he will eventually stop feeling anxious. Kid believes that he just needs to slowly get used to it and everything will be fine. Meanwhile, Momoka is happy for Tsubasa that she finally has a boyfriend. And Tsubasa thanks Momoka for her congratulations. Momoka then asks if they've kissed or hugged, but Tsubasa replies that they haven't. Momoka mentioned reading about such things in manga. And Tsubasa realized that slowly, they might do such things, which made her feel uneasy. Momoka notes that, despite them going to different schools, things seem to be going well. She adds that the two of them can have secret conversations all night, which only they know about until the next morning. Tsubasa recalls that Kid confided in her about his terrible past, which means that he sees her as someone very special. The scene shifts to Kid's first day of high school, where he decides to start a new life. It's an all-boys school, with no girls and most of the teachers are male. The school is also quite far from his hometown, so only 2 people here know about Kid's situation. His friends, Asahi and Izumi, who he went to middle school with. As Kid enters the school, he pauses, wondering if everything is okay. His friends, Asahi and Izumi, put their hands on his shoulders and ask why he's so stiff. Izumi tells Kid to act more cheerful, and Asahi explains that he should act like he usually does. Kid realizes that he looks silly when he smiles. But his friends reassure him not to worry because they'll always be there for him. Kid feels grateful and happy to have friends like Izumi and Asahi. With their encouragement, he entered school with confidence. Currently, Sato Kid has a girlfriend for the first time in his life. And he tells Izumi and Asahi that he will meet her tomorrow. Asahi says that it will be their first date after officially becoming a couple. But when Kid asks where he will take Tsubasa, he only thinks of the movie theater, and feels nervous, then suddenly wonders if he should plan the date carefully, like renting a car and eating at a restaurant by the sea. Izumi brings Kid back to reality, reminding him that it is still too early to do such things. Then, Kid asks if they have done their homework, and Izumi suddenly remembers that she forgot. He asks Asahi to show him his notes, and Asahi tells him to ask politely. Meanwhile, Kid hears his classmates talking about their fantasies with girls, and he feels uncomfortable hearing such conversations. At that moment, his classmate, Sahara, calls Kid and congratulates him on hearing that he has a girlfriend. When Kid asks how he knew, Sahara says that he accidentally heard Kid talking about it last week. At the same time, Mitsuki also comes and puts his hand on Sahara's shoulder, saying that it's good news and asks Kid if his girlfriend is cute. Kid recalls Tsubasa's face and actually thinks that she's cute. Mitsuki gets a little jealous and then frankly asks Kid if he and his girlfriend have done it. Kid stays silent at this question, while Sahara tells Mitsuki not to ask that to a couple who just met. Mitsuki says that if it was his girlfriend, he would have done it with her the next day, and says that it's normal. Sahara apologizes to Kid on Mitsuki's behalf and explains that Mitsuki thinks about such things all the time. Kid, confused, asks if such things are really normal, causing both of them to fall silent. Sahara asserted that what Mitsuki said was not common at all. The next day, Kid went to the meeting place, feeling nervous. He still remembered Sahara's words about not paying too much attention to such things, but he wondered if it was really normal to do that with a girlfriend. Also, Kid wondered if he could truly understand Tsubasa. He placed his hand on his chest, because he felt like there were too many things he didn't know, and began to worry whether he could enjoy today's date. He didn't understand why he always felt like this. When Tsubasa called his name, Kid looked up and saw that she was wearing a simple dress, which was perfect for the date. She said good morning and reminded him that there were still 10 minutes before the appointment time. Kid greets her back and finds her cute in her casual clothes. Tsubasa asks if she looks weird because he's staring at her for a while. Kid replies that it's just because she's so cute that he's a little flustered. Tsubasa blushes at the compliment, and Kid blushes just as much. The two remember that they're going to watch a movie and wonder what show it's on. Kid realizes that he's enjoying the moment and doesn't need to worry about anything. He thinks that since it's a date, it would be rude if he didn't enjoy himself. He notices that there's a couple in front of them holding hands. And it's not just one couple, but many other couples as well. Now, while hanging out with his girlfriend, Kid wondered if he should try holding Tsubasa's hand. He gathered his courage as he remembered that he was still scared, but the last time he touched her hand nothing bad happened. More importantly, he felt like touching her. With that thought, Kid bravely reached out and took Tsubasa's hand. Tsubasa felt his hand touch hers, which was a sign of progress for both of them. She was a little surprised, while Kid worried that he had overdone it, and pulled his hand back, apologizing for the surprise. Tsubasa smiled and said it was okay, and the two continued walking as before. However, inside, Tsubasa was truly surprised after that moment. She remembered Kid telling her that he felt very uncomfortable when touched suddenly, without warning. She realized that he was trying his best, which made her very happy. Kid still didn't understand why he let go of Tsubasa's hand. He knew that when he held her hand, he didn't need to be afraid. Because Tsubasa was a kind and gentle girl, not an old woman who would do something cruel to him. Kid could trust that Tsubasa wasn't like that woman in the past, so he didn't need to be afraid. But suddenly, he felt a little uncomfortable and negative, without knowing why. After that, they went to the cinema, where there were many movies on the list. Both Kid and Tsubasa secretly liked watching action movies, but were worried that it would ruin the date. Kid asked Tsubasa which movies she liked, and she asked him back. They decided to count to 3 and choose at the same time. In the end, they both chose action movies, and were surprised by the coincidence. They laughed and went to see the movie together. The movie was interesting enough to keep them both interested until the end. After that, they went shopping and ate together. As the date was coming to an end, Tsubasa said that she felt a little lonely going home. And Kid heard her continue to share that she sometimes imagined how wonderful it would be if they went to the same school. That way, they could see each other every day. But then she added that if they went to the same school, they probably wouldn't have had such a fateful encounter. No matter how they met, she still thought that she would always have unrequited feelings for Kid and would eventually muster up the courage to confess to him. Kid felt very touched when he heard that. Tsubasa apologizes for saying too much, but she's sure that if they were in the same school, she would have a lot of rivals, and Kid might have found someone else. Kid denies it, saying that he's not that popular. And even if he were in an environment with a lot of other girls, he still believes that he would fall in love with Tsubasa. He feels a little embarrassed after saying that. Tsubasa smiles and says that it's great, and that she's glad that Kid tried to hold her hand today. Especially since he said that he wasn't comfortable with close contact. That means Kid is trying to overcome his fear. Kid knows that deep down, he's not really trying. But he realizes that it sounds like he is. Tsubasa says that she wants to help Kid, and if he feels uncomfortable for any reason, he can let go of her hand at any time. Hearing those words touched Kid. Tsubasa asked if he wanted to try holding her hand again. And Kid agreed. He reached out and held Tsubasa's hand tightly. She asked how he felt, and Kid replied that it was fine. Although his heart was beating very fast. Tsubasa was happy and was sure that if they continued to try together, Kid would no longer be afraid of anything. This moment became a special moment for both of them. Kid had never known that a girl's hand was so small and soft. He felt very comfortable holding her hand. But suddenly, he felt a small spark, causing his memory of the injury to flash back for a moment, making his hand tremble. Tsubasa worriedly asked him if something was wrong. And he replied that nothing was wrong. Kid took a deep breath to calm himself down and tried not to think about unnecessary things. When they heard the announcement that the train at Station 2 was about to arrive, Kid told Tsubasa that her train had arrived. She stood up, told him to be careful on the way home, and thanked him for the fun day. Kid smiled and waved goodbye to her as she left. However, after Tsubasa left, Kid remained at the table, feeling a little strange and trembling slightly inside. He looked up and thought that this date had ended without anything bad happening. The next day, Tsubasa told her friend, Momoka, that they held hands on their date yesterday, and Momoka was happy for her. Tsubasa added that Kid's height hadn't changed much and his hand was warm, making her heart beat fast. Suddenly, they heard another classmate talking about a girl who was predicted to be pregnant, and she was worried about it. Tsubasa said that it must have happened when the girl stayed at her boyfriend's house once a week, and every time it happened, it was normal for it to go beyond just meeting. The girl's friend advised to protect herself, and hopes her parents won't find out. Momoka comments that those girls are talking about crazy things, but Tsubasa feels uneasy when she hears about staying overnight every week. Momoka tells Tsubasa that such things are normal for couples, and she is sure that Tsubasa's boyfriend will treat her well. Tsubasa replied that Kade wasn't the kind of dirty person who would treat her like that, but that he was pure and wonderful. Momoka was silent while Tsubasa was happy because she believed what she thought was right. That night, when Tsubasa was at home, she watched a TV show with a couple, but her mother changed the channel to the news, and reminded Tsubasa that her tutor would be coming tomorrow. Tsubasa agreed with her mother and said that she would go home early. When she returned to her room, she sat down and thought about the conversation she heard in class, which became a strange memory for her. Tsubasa decided to divert her thoughts and make her heart beat faster. So she took out a romance manga to read, with sweet events of a couple. She felt happy because she believed that love should be sparkling and make people's hearts flutter. She hoped to see Kate again soon, hoping that they would hold hands again, go to many places, and talk more to understand each other better. Kate, whom Tsubasa loved, was the model of love that she had always admired, and now it had come true. A few days later, Kate and Tsubasa met at a cafe, where they ordered cakes and coffee. Tsubasa said that she had always wanted to visit this cafe and was happy to find an empty seat. She also said that the space inside the cafe made her feel peaceful. And the waitress was also very beautiful. Kate just smiled slightly because he was not sure whether to agree with her or not. They chatted for a while and left the cafe, after trying a few dishes from the menu, all of which were delicious. Tsubasa expressed her wish to return to the cafe next time. But she noticed Cade looked confused. As he watched the rain begin to fall heavily, they didn't have an umbrella, so Cade said that the rain wasn't that heavy yet and suggested they find a place with a roof. He took off his jacket and gave it to Tsubasa, saying that it would be a little better. Tsubasa worriedly asked him how he was, and Cade replied that he was fine, which made her heart flutter. The two of them started running in the rain and laughing along the way until they reached a covered park. Tsubasa thanks Cade for leading her and asks if he's okay as he hands her his shirt. He replies that it's okay. She has a towel in her pocket and offers to dry Cade's hair. He accepts, which makes her happy, and Tsubasa is careful to remind him before she touches him. She gently dries his hair with the towel, and Cade sits quietly like a puppy. He recalled the moment when she told him to let her know if he felt uncomfortable, and realized that she was always very considerate whenever she touched him. Cade wondered if it was because she remembered what he had told her, but regardless, she was still a very nice girl with gentle hands and a peaceful atmosphere that made him feel at ease. Cade and Tsubasa's eyes met at close range, and both of their faces blushed as they gradually moved closer and embraced each other in a sweet kiss. This was a sweet moment just for them, a feeling that both of them had cherished deep down since childhood. Tsubasa had always admired romantic love like in manga and had dreamed of falling in love like this. The current situation was exactly what she had wished for, with the ideal guy she had always wanted. Tsubasa cherishes this moment, and so does Cade. After the kiss, the two of them look at each other awkwardly, and Tsubasa reminds her that his hair is dry. Cade thanks her for drying his hair and lending her a towel. Tsubasa is very happy to have Cade by her side. They really are a good couple. The next day at school, Tsubasa's friend asks her if she'll see Cade again. Then another classmate comes up and says that she heard that she and Cade are a couple, and asks how things are going. Tsubasa replies that Cade is her first boyfriend, so she still doesn't know a lot, but they've gotten to know each other a lot and now she feels like they can talk about anything. This answer surprises her classmate. She asks Tsubasa if Cade is really her first boyfriend, since it's probably hard to have him as her first boyfriend. Tsubasa asks her what she meant by that, and is confused when her classmate asks if Cade told her anything. Tsubasa is confused when she hears that, and the other girl feels regretful for bringing it up. With a hesitant look, she says that Sato Cade was absent from school for a while, and that what she is about to tell is just a rumor. She heard that Cade got into some trouble involving a woman, and she advises Tsubasa to ask Cade directly to confirm. If Cade really has a dangerous past, she thinks Tsubasa should find someone else to date. Then, Tsubasa texts Cade, asking him to meet again at the park they used to go to. When Cade arrives, he is confused as to why she chose this place, especially since he is still conscious of what happened between them last time. Tsubasa calls his name and says she has something to say. She apologizes if this brings up memories he doesn't want to remember, but when he told her that he was the victim of an assault by a woman, she thought he was being harassed. And she said a lot of things without thinking. Cade asks why she's bringing this up now. Tsubasa replies that the girl from the same junior high mentioned something about how he's been absent from school for a while, which means he's had a worse time than she imagined. With Cade saying something about Cade not feeling good about bringing it up. But Tsubasa really apologizes for bringing it up like that. Cade says that she doesn't need to apologize, and that it's his fault for not being clear about it in the first place. Tsubasa asks him to tell her exactly what happened. And Cade says that the story might be unpleasant, but he wants her to hear the whole truth about his high school days. Cade tells her that he was a shy but cheerful boy in high school. It was also when he met a trainee teacher, a woman who had caused him great pain during his time at school. The teacher asks him if he has time, and Cade recalls that she is a trainee teacher from Osaka. She asks for his help because he is a member of the study committee and hopes that he can guide her about class activities and how to organize the morning test before the exam. Cade offers to bring all the printed materials he has used up to that point, and the teacher thanks him for his help. Osaka said that Cade was more experienced than her when it came to understanding the school and classroom activities, so she would rely on him. Cade, though shy about helping, is kind enough to spend time assisting Osaka-sensei during her internship, and the two begin to spend more time together because of this. Cade's friends, Izumi and Asahi, tease him that it's unfair for him to be around Osaka-sensei, and call him an old lady lover, to which Cade calls them idiots for their teasing. Osaka interjects, saying that Sito is just teaching her some things that are necessary for a trainee teacher like herself. Izumi and Asahi say that they can teach her the same things, and she just laughs it off. Osaka is a beautiful and kind teacher who gets along well with her students despite her being an adult, and Cade, without exception, likes and admires her very much. Until that tragic day, when the gym teacher asks Cade to bring some documents from the archives. Because of his good nature, Cade accepted and went there. There, Cade found Osaka-sensei crying in the storage room. When he called her name, tears rolled down her cheeks. And she said that she had made a mistake and was scolded today, making her feel that she might not be suitable to be a teacher. After all, she apologized for showing such an ugly side of her and felt like she had failed as an adult, and the teacher like him told her not to say anything, because her class was easy to understand and everyone liked her. Then she asked him if he still liked her despite seeing her face like this. And he agreed, saying that he would cheer her on. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. She said that she was insecure about herself to this extent. Cade looked around and thought about what to do now. Then he gave her his handkerchief. Osaka continued to hug Cade. And he was suddenly startled by her actions, and thanked him for being so kind to her. Cade could clearly feel his heart beating strongly. And he was embarrassed, trying to tell her that he was surprised by her actions. But no one knew what made Osaka decide to do that. She suddenly leaned closer to Cade and asked him if he could comfort her. She said that he didn't need to do anything and that she would guide him through everything. She also said that he could keep what was about to happen a secret. Cade, still too naive to understand what was going on, asked her what she was going to do with him in a place like this. Osaka started to change. While saying that Cade would feel comfortable, Cade kept asking what, as he watched her do that. She said that he should feel lucky that he got to experience this before anyone else, and become an adult before anyone else. Meanwhile, Asahi and Izumi are searching for Cade. A student says that he saw Cade enter the gym storage room earlier. At the same time, Cade was suffering from the attack. Every moment of that experience was like hell for him. He was completely frozen, unable to move and just waiting for everything to pass. In that moment, the person in front of him was no longer the teacher he knew, but a giant monster. After the incident ended, Izumi and Asahi found Cade lying on the floor. From then on, Cade suffered severe psychological trauma and just wanted to stay in his room. His parents were extremely heartbroken when they found out what had happened. The students who didn't know what had happened began to think that Cade was absent because he was involved in some kind of trouble, and his reputation began to be ruined by the spreading rumors. Cade was so scared that he couldn't do anything. During those days, his friends, Asahi and Izumi, still came to visit as usual. Not trying to comfort or persuade him to return to school, but just coming to be friends. Fortunately, Cade heard that the school had taken action and the Osaka trainee teacher had received a suitable punishment. After the second half of 9th grade, Cade returned to school and chose an all-boys school to continue studying. When he heard the whole story, Tsubasa's face was filled with fear, not knowing what to say. Cade told her not to worry. He didn't expect her to comfort him, but then he realized that Tsubasa started to cry because of the pain he had endured. Cade was silent, then also shed tears. And also thanked her for listening to him. After he thanked her, she apologized, saying that she shouldn't have been the one crying. The two let out a small laugh to clear the heavy atmosphere. Cade reminded Tsubasa if she had enough time because she remembered that she had a lesson with her new tutor and needed to leave early. Tsubasa said that today her mind was only thinking about Cade, causing him to blush. Afterwards, they say goodbye to each other and hope to get in touch soon. Cade feels much better after the meeting. He tells his friends and Mr. Miyamoto about sharing his past with Tsubasa. Izumi compliments him for being brave, and Asahi asks what she said. Cade mentions Tsubasa's comment that he must have suffered a lot. Hearing this, Asahi and Izumi's views of Tsubasa change completely. Cade says that, after all, she listened to him, so he thought he should update Mr. Miyamoto. Mr. Miyamoto is happy to see things going well for Cade, and reassures him that there is no need to apologize for not coming sooner. He is always there to help students when they are in trouble or need someone to talk to. Cade felt that he was an adult that students could easily approach and talk to. Mr. Miyamoto's words moved Cade and his friends. Cade says that he feels relieved that he has nothing to hide from Tsubasa. Asahi reassures Cade that he did a good job. And the three continue to chat happily. Meanwhile, Tsubasa realizes that the truth of what happened is a little different from the rumors she heard. In the end, Cade was actually the victim, not the troublemaker. He confides in her about his painful past, and the first feeling Tsubasa has is happiness. Because Cade trusted her, making her feel a connection between them. That makes her happy, but also makes her realize that her previous thoughts about them being similar were wrong. They are not similar at all. Suddenly, Tsubasa finds herself feeling sad and doesn't understand why she has negative thoughts. She reminds herself that Cade was the one who was attacked, and the problem isn't what kind of experience he has with women. Then Tsubasa saw a couple sitting together, with the boy's hand on the girl's shoulder. The sight suddenly brought up a series of negative emotions in her, making her heart heavy. That night, in her bedroom, Tsubasa began to wonder what kind of person that teacher was. She remembered that Cade had said that the teacher was very beautiful and admired by everyone. Tsubasa didn't want to think about it, but couldn't help but feel sorry for Cade. She closed her eyes and wondered if Cade had ever liked the teacher at first, or if they had ever kissed. Tsubasa's thoughts became more and more negative, and finally, she wondered if Cade could have called for help or run away when the teacher made intimate contact with him. Tsubasa knew that she shouldn't have thought like that, because Cade was the victim and it wasn't his fault. But on the other hand, she thought that his body had gone through such impure acts, which made Tsubasa feel disgusted. Miyamoto had some doubts after Cade told her story, wondering if a teenage girl like Tsubasa could easily accept someone else's heavy past. Tsubasa felt uneasy and ran to the bathroom. Miyamoto's worries were completely correct, because Tsubasa felt so disgusted that she vomited a lot. Miyamoto understood that there were times when people didn't fully understand themselves, and this was happening to Tsubasa as well. She didn't expect that she would feel so disgusted. During her elementary school years, Tsubasa had learned about sex education, but it was just another lesson like any other. Later, she asked her mother about restricted areas for people over 18, and her mother replied that she wasn't allowed to enter. But adults still get in just fine. Whenever there is a romantic show on TV, when the actors mention having experience in love, Tsubasa's mother will turn off the TV and say that such entertainment shows are vulgar and silly. Now, Tsubasa realizes that her mother always gets upset when such things appear in front of her. The events that she witnessed but was not allowed to understand clearly make her wonder why everyone else seems to enjoy their lives. The next morning, Tsubasa sits up in bed, unable to sleep. Then goes downstairs and says good morning to her parents. They greet her and ask if she is okay, because she looks unwell. Tsubasa replies that she is just thinking about some things. Then she suddenly thinks that even her mother did that to her father, and the negative feeling came back, making her rush out of the house to go to school without eating breakfast. At school, Tsubasa struggled with her thoughts between classes. She thought about the girl who did it and her teacher, who was an adult, who must have done it too. Not only that, her friends like Aya and Momoka all had boyfriends, so they might have gone through it too. The thought that this was normal made her feel like she was the only one who was so naive about it. She felt embarrassed thinking about it. After school, Tsubasa walked home on her usual route. Tsubasa Cade's past really shocked her, causing her to almost be swept away by the chaotic emotions. She knew she had to calm down, since he had told her about his past, even though it was difficult for him. She didn't want him to feel like she was a difficult girl to approach, making him feel insecure. At that moment, Cade appeared and called her name, waving goodbye, saying that it was a coincidence to meet her here. Cade asked her if she was on her way home. Tsubasa's heart clenched. She realized that to her, nothing seemed to have changed, while Cade was still as calm and composed as ever. Maybe she was thinking too much. At that moment, there was a man walking right behind her. So Cade pulled Tsubasa back to ensure safety. But when his hand touched her, an unpleasant feeling suddenly came over her, causing her to jerk away and suddenly become anxious. Cade asked her what was wrong, but Tsubasa didn't know how to answer, and could only apologize and run away. Cade was completely taken aback, while Tsubasa ran and cried, wondering why her body reacted that way, unconsciously rejecting his touch. Tsubasa ran down the road and crossed the bridge. Then she heard Cade calling her name, running after her with a worried expression. He apologized for chasing her, but he couldn't help but worry about her. Tsubasa told him that it was nothing, but Cade commented that she looked pale, and offered to come with her if she felt unwell. While Cade spoke, Tsubasa kept paying attention to Cade's body, and tears fell from her eyes. Cade panicked, asking if he had done something to upset her. Tsubasa could only reply that, ever since she heard about his past, she felt that something was wrong. Cade didn't expect that his past was the cause. Meanwhile, messy thoughts kept swirling in her mind, making her panic, and the feeling of unease gradually took over. Those thoughts hurt her. She hated that feeling and it made her really miserable. But when she raised her head, Tsubasa noticed Cade's face was pale, as if he was terrified. She knew she shouldn't have said that and quickly told her that it was her problem, not his. Cade replied that it was normal to feel disgusted after hearing about it, and he apologized to her. He also said that asking her to forget might be too difficult, but he wished she had told him from the beginning if that was her true thought. He didn't care if she couldn't bear it, or found it disgusting and abnormal. Tsubasa tried to say that it wasn't what she meant. But Kate fell silent, wondering if her kind words really came from the heart. Kate was truly upset, and he apologized once again for making her force herself just for him, because she must have felt disgusted. Tsubasa quickly refused, insisting that she didn't find him disgusting. At first, she was happy when he confided in her. But she just didn't have experience dealing with this. She thought that she had met the ideal guy, and the love she had always dreamed of was slowly coming true. However, she felt uneasy when she didn't know what he was thinking, especially the first time they went out after school, when he suddenly pushed her hand away. She was really scared at that time, but still tried to accept that real love might not be like what she had imagined. However, she couldn't believe that he had such a past. Kate kept hearing her talk about how she felt, that now whenever she thought about him, she felt pain imagining what had happened to him. Wondering if everything was really against his will, since he was a man after all and should have been able to fight back. At this point, Kate can't take it anymore. He yells at her to stop. He says that being blamed like this makes him tremble and feel pain, emphasizing that she can only say those words because she has never experienced something similar. Kate begs her not to force him to repeat that traumatic event again. Tsubasa bursts into tears. And Kate tells her that she is not strange, it is not her fault, and he is sure that her feelings right now are normal. Kate can't stand, he falls to his knees and says that he was wrong. To think that he could date someone. And apologizes for dragging her into this mess. Tsubasa feels devastated upon hearing Kate's story, which makes her feel uncomfortable and disgusted. She cries a lot and starts to leave. While Kate was also crying loudly because he felt that he was not normal. He sat there, crying and crying. Time passed, Kate still sat there crying and knew that he needed to stand up quickly or people would think he was strange. But even so, he still couldn't breathe properly. He wanted to scream, and his mind went blank as he sobbed and sobbed. He wished that someone would come and save him. Maybe Asahi, Izumi, Mr. Miyamoto, or his mother. Then he heard Asahi's voice calling his name and asking what happened. Kate raised his head, tears streaming down his face. And they helped him stand up, taking him home. There, Kate told them everything that had happened and that they didn't expect it to turn out like this. Kate felt guilty because Asahi and Izumi had blessed him, but things still didn't go smoothly at all. Izumi tells Kate not to worry about them and that there is nothing to apologize for. Kate admits that he said some harsh words to Tsubasa and made her cry because of him, making him feel bad for doing so. Izumi reassures him that he shouldn't blame himself too much, and that it wasn't entirely his fault. Asahi speaks up, saying that it was Tsubasa who hurt Kate first, and that he has a very clear opinion about it. They see Kate leaving the house, and when asked, he says that he went to the convenience store. Kate went out because he felt uncomfortable at home right now and didn't want his mother to worry about him. He also feels bad for causing trouble for Izumi and Asahi, and it seems like things are repeating themselves. He thinks that no matter how hard he tries, things won't change. Then Kate realizes that he is starting to have negative thoughts, and told himself that this time it simply didn't work out. They had only been dating for a short time, so the wound wasn't too deep. However, he was still depressed as he walked until he realized that he was standing in front of the cafe where he and Tsubasa used to go. He recalled the good memories there, of the day they ran in the rain together and had a good time. He recalled the first time they met, and Tsubasa's bright smile. Kate didn't realize when he started crying, because he knew he loved Tsubasa. But love alone wasn't enough. A beautiful woman approached him and asked why he was standing in front of her cafe. She asked if he was hurt anywhere, if he wasn't feeling well, or if he was lost. Hearing her question, Kate apologized for disturbing her business, saying that he was just going through a lot. The woman looked at Kate more closely, and asked if he had time, as she thought it was not a good idea to let him wander around in that state. She invited him inside for a latte or something warm. She then led Kate inside and closed the shop, telling him to sit anywhere he liked since the shop was closed and empty. She asked if he would prefer cocoa or hot milk, but Kate replied that a latte was fine and felt that she was treating him like a child. As he sat down, Kate recalled his date with Tsubasa, how much fun it was that day. The woman brought the latte, and Kate said he would pay. She replied that it was okay, just consider it a small gift. Kate thanked her for the coffee and took a sip, saying that it was really delicious, which made her happy. She asked him if he was a person who cried easily, or if he had experienced something painful. Kate apologized to her, and when she asked why, he replied that it was because he had caused her too much trouble, and that a guy shouldn't cry in front of others. She told him that gender didn't matter in this case, because both men and women, adults and children, had days when they couldn't stop crying. And now that she was here, There was no one else who would scold Kid, so he didn't need to worry about anything. A sense of peace filled Kid's heart, and he began to cry in that warm and peaceful atmosphere, as if the pain in his chest and the tears slowly flowed away. He doesn't know anything about her name, age, or past, and moreover, she's a grown woman. He feels like she's like Mr. Miyamoto, and for some reason, he feels safe around her. After feeling better, Kid thanks her for the coffee and says that he still wants to pay for the drink. She says that if so, she hopes Kid will come back when he feels happier, which would be the best thank you she can give her. Kid feels happy to be treated so gently. However, the next day at school, Kid is absent. Mitsuki asks if he's sick, and Asahi replies that it's probably so. Mitsuki guesses that Kid might have skipped class to go on a date with his new girlfriend. Sahara says that Kid isn't that type of person, while Asahi and Izumi, who know the truth, remain silent. That afternoon, at the girls' school, many girls cheered when they saw two handsome boys appear at the school gate. They wondered if the two were someone's boyfriends, and some even wanted to talk to them. While Tsubasa was walking as usual, she panicked when two people called her name. It was Asahi and Izumi. Asahi asked if she could spend some time talking to them. Izumi and Asahi started talking to Tsubasa, who was with her friend Momoka. Tsubasa recognized them as Kid's friends and asked if they needed anything from her, since they had come all the way to this all-girls school. Asahi said that she had done the same thing before, and mentioned that she must have heard everything from Kid, then felt disgusted and broke up with him. Asahi asked if she was right in assuming that Tsubasa had heard everything from Kid and then felt disgusted. Tsubasa replies that he doesn't need to use words like disgusting to describe it. Izumi, worried, quickly says that they didn't come here to blame her, and that it was difficult to ask her to accept the truth easily in the first place. However, Asahi insists that he actually came here to blame, because it was Tsubasa who approached Kid first and then hurt him. He thinks that's quite selfish and asks if she thinks so. Izumi reminds Asahi that he initially doubted Kid's decision to tell Tsubasa everything, but Asahi replies that if he had known this beforehand, he would have objected. Izumi thinks that Asahi has gone too far and only decided things after the fact, but Asahi insists that Kid was never at fault. It was these women who always came to him and now hurt Kid like this. Tsubasa couldn't argue with that. And Izumi didn't want Asahi to be so rude, even if he was right. Momoka also watched the situation from behind. Asahi declared that he couldn't stand by while Kid was hurt, and since they couldn't change what had happened, he came today to tell Tsubasa that she shouldn't approach Kid anymore. Tsubasa spoke up, admitting that she was too childish, and realizing the problems she was having. She had no intention of telling Kid what was on her mind, but ended up saying a lot of unnecessary things, and that was bad. However, she didn't hate Kid or reject him. But Kid himself told her that he was wrong to think that he could date and apologized for dragging her into this mess. She asserted that it was Kid who pushed her away in the first place. To Asahi and Izumi's surprise, Tsubasa knew that she couldn't approach Kid anymore after he rejected her. Momoka, worried about Tsubasa, spoke up and said that if Asahi and Izumi could say those things as Kid's friends, then she could say something as Tsubasa's friend. She said that Tsubasa had also suffered a lot of pain and if Kid was like that, it might be best for her to stop seeing him. Momoka emphasized that even if someone had gone through difficult experiences, that didn't mean they had the right to hurt others. So if Asahi and Izumi said that Tsubasa was selfish for approaching Kid, she also had to say that Tsubasa had been hurt and that this needed to be understood. Sito was also the one who had imposed his trauma on Tsubasa and hurt her, and Momoka wanted to make it clear that it was wrong for outsiders like them to interfere in this matter. She asked them to leave. And after hearing that, Asahi and Izumi left, because what Momoka said was true. Izumi tells Asahi that he was too angry today, showing his anger like that as if he was holding a grudge. Izumi also comments that if Kid knew about this, he would ask why Asahi did that. When Izumi notices Asahi crying, he understands that Asahi already knows all about it and doesn't need to hear more. This isn't something they should interfere with. But Asahi can't help but think that things might have been better if Tsubasa hadn't shown up. Izumi silently looks at Asahi and says that it seems like he's taking care of two big kids. Meanwhile, Kid stays home from school for the day and thinks about the woman he met the other day. She's an adult, but he doesn't feel scared at all. Wondering if it's because she has a pleasant demeanor, or maybe because she resembles Mr. Miyamoto, so he feels reassured. He couldn't help but recall what the woman had said. Both men and women, adults and children, had days when they couldn't stop crying, and no one would blame him, so he didn't need to worry. Kid didn't realize when he started crying, because he knew that making the decision to forget everything and pretend like nothing had happened was extremely difficult. He wanted to take the time to face it and move forward again. When he returned to school, Cade decided to apologize to Asahi and Izumi for making them worry and reassure them that he was fine. After that, he planned to go to the cafe and thank the woman, and maybe start something new. Meanwhile, the woman at the cafe was writing a flyer recruiting part-time employees. She hoped to find someone who would work hard to help her with her work. As for Tsubasa and Cade, no one knows how their lives will turn out from this point on. The next day, on the way to school, Cade sees the cafe he visited before. He remembers that the woman told him to come back as a customer when he feels happy, and that would be the best thank you for her. Cade decides to invite Asahi and Izumi to the cafe after school. Izumi is watching a song on her phone. Then he tells Asahi to apologize to Cade if he shows up today. Asahi agrees, then asks Izumi if she's watching her favorite idol. Izumi denies it, and says that the important thing depends on how Cade will act today. He thinks that Cade is sad, so mentioning it would be like pouring salt on his wound, and the timing has to be right. Just then, Cade enters the classroom with a bright smile. Izumi realizes that Cade is trying to pretend to be happy. Cade tells Izumi not to say that, and admits that he was trying but accepted and handled things well. Seeing Asahi looking worried, Cade asks if something is wrong. They head to the stairs, where Cade learns that Asahi had an argument with Tsubasa. Asahi apologizes for acting on his own, surprising Cade since they went all the way to the girls' school. Izumi explains that Asahi did it because he was worried about Cade, so he asked him not to be angry with Asahi, and that Izumi himself was at fault for not stopping him. He asks Asahi to reconsider his actions, and Asahi apologizes. However, Cade feels that this makes things more awkward for Tsubasa. However, since this is a relationship that has ended, Cade thinks that it was inevitable. He is truly glad that his two friends did everything for him, and said that it was rare to see Asahi become so emotional. Cade felt a little shiver when he saw Asahi like that. Then he remembered asking both of his friends if they were free after school to go to a place he wanted to go. After school, they go to the cafe, and Asahi comments that the atmosphere is pleasant. The owner, Ryo, welcomes them, and Cade is pleased to see her calm face and smile. Ryo gives them the menu and announces that the dessert of the day is cheesecake. The three order and start chatting while eating, sharing stories about the part-time jobs they heard about and how hard it is. Cade says that maybe he should try to find such a job too, and Asahi asks him if he wants to buy anything. Cade replies that it is a way to start over and that he has wanted to try working for a long time. Asahi worriedly asks Cade if he's okay, to which Izumi insists why not. This makes Asahi realize that he's being overprotective again. Izumi emphasizes that there's nothing wrong with trying part-time jobs, and if anything happens, they'll figure it out. Asahi comments that they have a generous father, referring to Izumi, and adds that it's important to consider the work environment and the people you work with. He advises Cade that if he gets along well with his co-workers, he'll stay there for a long time. They then continue to enjoy coffee and pastries. And Cade sees a part-time job flyer at the cafe. At this moment Cade stands up, because he simply wanted to try something new and get over his heavy feelings. He approached Ryo and told her that he had seen a flyer for a part-time job. Little did he know that meeting this person would soon bring about a major change in his life. Cade began working at the cafe, doing tasks such as taking orders and serving customers. Ryo informed him that once he had been working for a week, she would like to ask how things were going. Cade agreed, and said that she was very dedicated to teaching. When calling her by her last name, he asked if he should call her owner, or something similar, to which she replied that it was not necessary to be so formal, and that many customers also called her by her first name. She insisted that Cade could call her by her first name. And he agrees. She sees that he enjoys working here, which makes her happy. Later, at school, Asahi asks Cade how his part-time job is going. Cade replies that everything is going well and the customers are friendly. Asahi asks if he is still an intern. Cade replies that it is time to see if he is suitable for the job. Ryo says that it would be bad for both of them if Cade is not suitable for the job. Asahi expresses concern that Cade decided to try a part-time job without a clear reason. He immediately decides to go home to finish his application. Cade smiles, knowing that this is embarrassing. Izumi asks if he knows how to make coffee. Cade replies that a newbie like him cannot do that. He only helps clean and carry things. Asahi wonders why he decided to work at this cafe. Because he didn't think Cade would work under an older woman. Cade explains that he actually knew Ryo before, and he tells his friends about that day. They realize that she was very kind to him. Cade reassures them that he was still on guard and had no plans to be vulnerable. But somehow, she made him feel like an adult he could trust. Izumi and Asahi wonder what he's up to, and he says that he feels like Ryo is like Miyamoto-sensei. He also knows that his two friends are worried about what happened. But just because of that, he doesn't want to live a life that doesn't involve anyone else. To be honest, when it comes to love, Cade had a feeling that he wasn't suited for it before. So he didn't want to feel scared, overreact, and defend himself, to continue living in a small world. He thought that even if he got hurt again, he wanted to do what he could and stay positive, even if it was just a little. Cade felt a little wrong for continuing to make his two friends worry about him. So he would be more careful not to act rashly. Izumi and Asahi both felt relieved when Cade reassured them. They also assured him that it was okay to cause trouble or make them worry. Cade was happy for the support from his friends, but he didn't know that Sahara was watching him from behind. After that, Cade went to work at the shop as usual. And he worked very hard, feeling happy in his heart. After work, he thanked Rio for his help, and Cade is satisfied that he remembers most of the menu items, which means he can fit in a part-time job. He then hears a girl arguing with a boy. She asks why he does things that annoy her. The boy replies that he just treats her like a friend. Cade thinks that he should quickly leave the situation. The girl then yells at the boy that he is the worst and that she shouldn't have liked Sahara in the first place. She slaps him. Cade realizes that the boy is Sahara from his class. And Sahara also recognizes Cade. He asks if he is going home. Cade apologizes for witnessing that, and Sahara tells him not to worry about it. Cade sees Sahara's cheeks turn red from the slap. And hears Sahara say that he really doesn't understand why people need love in dating. He sometimes wonders if people really have that much free time. Because there are so many fun things and things that everyone wants to do, like he himself has his own hobby. He asks Cade how he feels about that. Cade recalls a time when he felt he wasn't suited for love. Sahara continues to say that he doesn't consider these things fun and asks Cade what he thinks about that. Cade doesn't know how to answer. And Sahara apologizes for asking such a difficult question. Sahara then goes on to mumble that maybe he's not someone who easily gets emotional or attracted to people, and that he doesn't know much about it. Sahara once went to see Mr. Miyamoto for advice, and was told that it was a possibility, and not something that was abnormal or bad. Cade asked if the reason he had just argued with that girl was because of this, and Sahara replied that their musical tastes were very compatible. She was a nice girl, but when they started dating, she suggested doing things like a couple, but Sahara didn't really want to. He wondered why men and women had to naturally engage in those things. Cade listened to his words. Sahara said that even though Cade said it was normal for a couple, he still didn't understand why it was considered normal. After saying all that, Sahara apologized for talking too long and mentioned that he always felt that they had a lot in common, so he continued talking. Cade didn't mind. He shared that he had experienced realizing that he was in love, so he thought that maybe his feelings would be a little different from Sahara's. However, he also understood the feeling of not knowing what normal was. Sahara thanks Cade and says frankly that he's not good at the topics about girls that other guys usually talk about, like or want. He thinks it's because he doesn't feel the same way. Cade isn't good at those things either, since he's quite shy. However, Sahara emphasizes that they're not exactly what people call normal or popular. And that really, this whole thing is complicated to think about. The next day, Cade comes to his part-time job as usual, helping to arrange new furniture. Rio is very pleased with his work and thanks him for his help. She explains that she ordered new furniture, but the manufacturer didn't send anyone to help set it up. Cade says that it's no big deal, but he asks if it's okay to replace the entire furniture. Rio replied that these items were quite old, and she had taken over this cafe from her grandmother, so there were many things here that were still in use today. While memories may be important, it's not always good to be bound by them. So Rio decides to change everything. She also doesn't forget to remind Cade that her grandmother is still healthy, as it might make him think that she's passed away. Cade is happy to hear that and ponders over her words that it's not good to be bound by memories. He realizes that even the place where he spent time with Tsubasa has changed its interior. While their friendship is no longer there, he thinks that maybe this is what he needs to start over. Rio's words really touch his heart. Rio then shares that she was worried at first when she first talked to him here, but now she's happy because Cade looks more alive than ever. Cade feels flustered when she recalls the first time they talked, because he was mostly crying at that time. Cade, feeling embarrassed, asked Rio not to mention it again, because it really made him feel embarrassed. But Rio continued to say that he was like a lost puppy in the rain, and it was nice to see him running around happily the next day. Cade asked her if he looked like that, and she smiled and said that he looked better when he was happy and smiling. Cade felt complimented and thanked her for those words. Then, it was time to serve the customers. Cade greeted them and offered to show them to their seats, reminding them to call him when they were ready to order. The customers this time were 3 girls, and they turned out to be Aya and Momoka. Aya asked Momoka if it was true that Tsubasa's ex-boyfriend had come to their school. Keed felt surprised to hear that, and he didn't know how to react in this situation. Keed clearly heard them talking about how his friends came to get revenge on Tsubasa, but Momoka denied that it happened. She thought that Keid's friends were worried about him, so they just came to remind Tsubasa not to hurt him anymore. Tsubasa was being single-sidedly blamed, so she couldn't help but speak up and now regrets it. Aya said that it was normal to defend your friend, and she was also surprised that they came without knowing what they were going to do. Another girl mentioned that she heard that the two boys were quite handsome. Aya also said that Tsubasa seemed sad recently and she was worried about her friend. They also didn't know the reason for Tsubasa's breakup, which made them feel sad for her, since her first boyfriend's memory was like that. Keid was sure that these girls were Tsubasa's friends and the two boys who came there must be Asahi and Izumi. He returned to the kitchen with a strange expression. And Ryo turns back to ask him what's wrong. She notices Keid seems uncomfortable, and also hears Momoka telling her friend that she hopes things will pass quickly. Having never met Keid before, she doesn't know what kind of person he is. At this point, Aya says that they should start ordering soon, and when they call the waiter, Ryo replies that she'll be there soon. She tells Keid to rest in the back room. Keid feels nervous and wants to work, but Ryo tells him it's okay. She goes to get the order from the group of girls, while Keid sits in the back room, thinking about how he doesn't know any of them and it seems like they don't know him either. He wants to be positive and that everything is going well, but he can't help but think about why such a coincidence happened. He also felt guilty, thinking that Tsubasa was unwell because of him. Keid remembered that she was a good girl, and now she was not well just because she got involved with him. At this time, Ryo knocked on the door and said that she would come in. She saw Keid sitting with his head down and his hands covering his face. She tried to put her hand on his shoulder to ask what happened, but Keid reacted strongly, panicked and backed away. He immediately apologized to Ryo when he saw that she seemed worried about him, and he also apologized for his strong reaction. Ryo sat down on the floor to look him straight in the eye and said that it was okay if he paid attention to what she said. She advised him to take a deep breath and exhale. Keid slowly calmed down following Ryo's instructions. And she compliments him on his good work, calling him a good boy. After that, she is glad to see that he has calmed down, but Keid apologizes for bothering her, saying that he should get back to work. However, Ryo tells him that she has closed the cafe, and that she actually wanted to do so because of the reorganization. She asks him if anything happened between him and the girls who came before. Keid replies that he doesn't know them directly, and tells her the whole story. Ryo simplifies the situation, but Keid doesn't mention the part about his high school years because he feels it's not relevant. He apologizes for bothering her with his personal matters, and she tells him that he doesn't need to apologize, because she doesn't want to meet people related to her past either. If it were her, she would even ban them from entering her cafe. Keid is surprised when she says that she will use her authority as the manager. Ryo then asked him if he cried that day for the same reason. Keid replied that he did. And that made her think that he must be suffering from his emotions. She said that time can heal many things. Although some things may be painful and unpleasant, he will definitely overcome them one day. She didn't want to be irresponsible in telling him that everything would be okay, but she also wanted him to look at the positive side during this time. There are many types of love that are part of youth. Keid felt better after Ryo encouraged him, and he told her that he really felt that she was an adult. He asked her if she had experienced many types of love. Or maybe married. Ryo replied that she had experienced many types of love, but not married and didn't need a partner. The next day, at school, Keid is doing cleaning duty, recalling how Ryo calmed him down. And it makes him feel happy. She was a good person, and Keid never thought that there could be someone like her. Warm, kind, and approachable, not to mention beautiful. He had believed that she had a husband and a happy family, but for some reason, he felt happy to know that she was not married. Suddenly, he realized that the feeling he was having was like relief. And he began to wonder if he was having the same thoughts as a dog who didn't want his master to be taken away by someone. Then Asahi came and informed Keid that he would be leaving early because he had a part-time job. But he noticed that Keid was acting strangely. When asked, Keid replied, he was trying to understand what it was like to be a dog. Then he asks Asahi about it. What does it mean when an adult says they don't need a partner? Asahi is surprised and asks why Keid is the one asking that, after he said he wasn't suited for love. Keid admits it, but he wonders if someone without any special circumstances can say such things normally. Asahi explains that if that's the case, they might be prioritizing work or hobbies over love, since there are many people who don't care about love. After that, Keid also goes to work part-time, thinking about what Sahara said, that he wasn't interested in love. He remembers how it hurt him when he realized that he couldn't win normally. He feels depressed thinking that he isn't suited for it. Now when he looks at Rio, he constantly remembers her saying that she wasn't married and didn't need a partner. He felt that the atmosphere around her was different when she said that, and it made him wonder the reason behind it and how she felt when she said those things. Work hours passed, and after closing the cafe, Cade came to tell Rio that he was going home. She thanked him for working today. But when Rio stood up, her foot slipped off the chair and she almost fell. Cade rushed over to help her, and she ended up falling on him. Luckily, no one was hurt. Cade and Rio stood close to each other, looking into each other's eyes. She suddenly apologized for falling on him and asked if he was hurt anywhere. Cade replied that he was fine, and she thanked him for helping her from the fall. Rio asked him to tell her if he felt any pain. Cade felt surprised that she had touched him just now, but instead of feeling scared, he felt calm again. Then, he heard her calling his name and apologizing for touching him. He also asked her if she was hurt, and she replied that she was fine, thanks to him holding her. Cade felt that she was fine and started running away from there because he felt embarrassed. Rio was still confused. As for Cade, he walked all the way to the park, really surprised that he felt creepy when someone touched him, but this time he was completely fine. Cade wondered why he felt that way. Was it because it was an emergency situation, or was it unintentional? Or was it simply because the person was real? He was experiencing new emotions that he had never felt before. While Tsubasa seemed to be walking somewhere with a sad look in her eye, a slight change in her hair made him feel uncertain about what would happen in both of their lives. The next day, Cade begins to realize that there are always things in life that people don't know. He often thinks that life would be easier if there were correct answers somewhere, like a guide in a game. He wonders if he knows more now because he is still a kid. Cade is confused about why he thinks about Rio so much just because she fell for him. Rio wakes up from the same dream and goes to school as usual. In class, Sahara is once again surprised to hear that Mitsuki has another girlfriend, and he quickly adapts as usual. Sahara asks Mitsuki if he thinks it will continue this time. Mitsuki replies that it depends on his current friend. Mitsuki then asks Cade how he is doing, and Cade replies that they actually broke up. This news surprised Mitsuki. However, Mitsuki just calmly said that there was no way to help, and that he should move on to the next person. Cade didn't expect any advice from him. Sahara whispered to Mitsuki that he doubted anyone could get over it as quickly as he did. Cade asked Mitsuki if he felt guilty about starting a new relationship. Mitsuki was taken aback by Cade's sudden question, and Cade insisted that he wasn't blaming him, but was simply asking the question. Mitsuki replied that he didn't feel guilty at all, and that while it would be a different matter if he broke up badly, when a couple dates and breaks up, it's usually a problem on both sides. If you look at it from an emotional perspective, if things don't work out, it means they weren't meant to be, or something like that. He also said that it's not surprising for a person to get hurt when they love, but their heart will remember it. Through regrets, they will learn to treat new friends better later. So he advised Cade to continue enjoying life instead of sitting around bored, because youth won't last forever and will quickly pass by before he realizes it. Moreover, as people often say, love is the best medicine to heal a broken heart. After school, Cade went to a cafe, and he realized that Mitsuki and Sahara had completely opposite personalities, but they would definitely get along because of that. Cade realized that his youth would quickly pass by before he realized it. He shook his head to clear those thoughts, feeling that he shouldn't think about all of this. Now, at work, he had become a full-time employee from the position of an intern. The cafe quickly became busy. And after closing, Rio commented that it was especially crowded today, and that it was usually crowded on weekends. At that moment the door opened, and Rio told the person who had just entered that they were closed. But to her surprise, it was her friend, Manami. Rio happily greeted her and asked about her life since getting married. Manami replied that life was difficult, but the happiness she had gained surpassed everything. Rio introduced Manami to Cade, an old friend of hers, and said that she came to visit. Manami praised the coffee Rio made as the best, so she couldn't help but stop by. Cade then introduced himself as a part-time employee, and Manami told him to let her know if Rio ever abused his power as manager. Cade replies that Rio is very nice to him. At this point, Rio tells Cade that his shift is over, and he can go home first. Rio thanks Manami for coming, and then Cade walks out of the counter, thinking that Rio's friend seems like a nice person. After closing the door, he hears Manami telling Rio that she's worried because Rio always works alone, and just when she hired a part-time employee, he's a cute boy. Manami asks Rio if she's aiming for a younger boyfriend. Rio refuses, saying that it would be like a crime. Cade hears from outside, and Rio says that she won't mix work and personal matters, and more importantly, Cade is still in high school, so she can't consider it. Because it's weird for an adult to consider a child as a romantic partner. Although she knew of some rare cases of adults having relationships with minors, those relationships could only survive if the love between them was strong enough. Keid felt a little relieved. And realized that she was a real adult, but he still didn't understand why his heart ached after hearing that conversation. Meanwhile, Sahara told Mitsuki that it was rare for him to say such things to Keid, like finding a new love. He suspected that Keid might be a player, but he didn't seem like the type to force his views on love onto others. Mitsuki spoke up, saying that Keid seemed to have found someone new, but it seemed like he was troubled by guilt over the girl he liked. Mitsuki noticed that Keid didn't seem to be aware of it, so he just encouraged Keid a little. Keid couldn't help but think back to Ryo's words about how it was weird for an adult to consider a child as a romantic partner. Those words made his heart ache, and he unconsciously pretended not to know it. But both the pain in his chest and the uneasy feelings inside were products of pent-up emotions that were slowly rising. Keid recalled that ever since he met Ryo, she had always been kind and gentle to him, creating a warm atmosphere around her. He realized that he was attracted to her when Mitsuki said that love was the best solution to heal a broken heart. Keid felt like he had become aware of his feelings of love, while at the same time experiencing pain. The next day, in class, Keid was lost in thought. And Asahi and Izumi noticed that he looked rather gloomy. Keid was thinking carefully. And knew that he was not good at relationships, so maybe he didn't need to worry about having feelings for someone. More importantly, he should be happy that he can like someone else. He remembered Mitsuki's advice to be positive and enjoy his life as a high school student, especially the ability to love. With a cheerful mood, Keid stood up and felt empowered. Now, he thought that there was no need to understand this feeling, but just have feelings for her. He didn't ask for anything more than that, and finally decided to go to the cafe. When he arrived, Ryo greeted him and said that he was a little early for work. Keid realized that he had arrived at the cafe early and started to feel nervous as he realized his feelings. At this point, Ryo asked him if he wanted to learn how to make coffee, if he was interested. Keid agreed to her offer, but asked if it was okay for her to teach him, since he was only a part-time employee. Ryo replied that it was no problem, as he had gradually gotten used to the job and was doing better. She also complimented him on being careful with his hands and believed that the coffee he made would taste good. Keid didn't know that Ryo had been watching him that much. And Ryo admitted that she had seen his hard work. Suddenly, Keid called her name and said that those warm words made him feel happy, giving him a strange feeling, making him feel like he was about to cry and his heart felt like it was saved. Ryo listened to him, and suddenly, Keid admitted that he liked her. He immediately wondered what he was thinking when he said those words, that he didn't need to understand this feeling, while feeling confused about how he couldn't control his overflowing emotions in front of Ryo. Keid wondered if Tsubasa felt the same way at that moment. After confessing her feelings to Ryo, he tried to say something else but was too nervous. Ryo simply thanked him, and hearing that made her feel happy to be Keid's manager. He was surprised that she just brushed him off, and asked if they should start practicing next week. She asked him to prepare for work now, and Keid started working nervously, feeling extremely embarrassed for saying those words. The words seemed to come out of his mouth automatically. And although it seemed that Ryo didn't understand the message he was trying to convey, Keid wondered if it was really okay. He knew that Ryo didn't see him as a lover but only as a child, and that she didn't want a romantic relationship before. He understands that in his mind while Ryo is still working normally, but inside, she feels surprised, trying to hide her surprised expression. Meanwhile, at the girls' school, Momoka is shocked to see Tsubasa cut her hair. She asks Tsubasa if she feels strange. Momoka affirms that Tsubasa looks cute. But it's shocking that she would make such a big change. She looks cute anyway. Tsubasa thanks her for the compliment and says that she wants to start a new beginning. She apologizes for making everyone worry. Momoka also feels a little emotional. Later, they are chatting with Aya, and Aya asks why it didn't work out with Seto Keid. Tsubasa says she can't go into details because it concerns Keid's privacy. But in short, the reason is because she can't handle his past. She thinks AIA is right. Tsubasa says that when it comes to sexual matters, she can't help but think of the other person as dirty. And the more she thinks about it, the more confused she becomes, making her feel nauseous. So, even though it wasn't Keid's fault, she said hurtful words to him. AIA is shocked and recalls that she told Tsubasa to confirm with Keid. But it's hard to believe that Tsubasa would ask Keid to tell her about his past and then blame him. Tsubasa nods with a sad expression. That's exactly what happened. Aya and Momoka are speechless at that. Aya speaks up, saying that she didn't know what was right before, so she didn't tell Tsubasa at that time. But in fact, at that time, There were a lot of fierce rumors that Sito was the victim. As Oya approaches Tsubasa, she asks how Tsubasa could judge Katie. And even say hurtful words to him, which makes Tsubasa a pest. Aya asks Tsubasa if she is such a bad person, leaving her feeling empty. She thinks Tsubasa's reasoning is too childish. Just because Kate has had adult experiences in the past, how can she judge him as dirty and disgusting? Aya says that if Tsubasa can't accept that, then how can she seek love with anyone? This is something that everyone will experience, sooner or later, because it is normal. Tsubasa is silent for a moment and then asks if she is a strange person, for not being able to accept things that are considered normal, even though she knows that what she did to Kate was terrible and unforgivable. She asks Aya to tell her what else she can do to cope with this pain. Tsubasa reasons that she can't just change her perspective, because she wasn't taught about such things, and that's how she was raised. When she realizes that even her parents had engaged in these acts in the past, Tsubasa feels sick at the mere thought. She now asks if she's the weird one, while everyone else is normal. Momoka feels sorry for Tsubasa, while Aya asks if she's talking about her parents or her relatives. It goes without saying that she won't feel good, but that has nothing to do with Kate in this situation. Tsubasa can't lift her head while Aya explains that it's not her fault, because that's how she was raised. But when she thinks that the victim also did those actions, and that makes them dirty, then it makes no sense. Furthermore, why did she have to tell Cade something that could hurt him the most? It couldn't have been said casually. She said that by doing so, Tsubasa had caused unnecessary pain to Cade. Tsubasa was almost on the same level as idiots who attack others and blame the victim. She yelled at Aya to shut up, because she knew that she had said something that couldn't be taken back. She had regretted it many times since that day, wondering why she had said that to Katie. Tsubasa exclaimed that Aya wouldn't understand how she felt, and that this had nothing to do with her, so why was Aya angry about it? Aya spoke up that she had gone through something similar in the past, but her pain was nothing compared to Kate's. Tsubasa was surprised. When Aya opens up about her incident, when she was attacked and then blamed herself, even though it was the other man's fault. She can't bear to think about it. Now, as she holds Tsubasa's collar tightly, Aya asks if Tsubasa means that her past and those who have experienced such attacks are dirty and disgusting. Tsubasa starts to cry, saying that no matter how hard she tries, she can't stop thinking about it, which is why she has to endure. Momoka, who is standing behind and watching this dramatic scene, also starts to cry. And Aya tells Tsubasa that she should think carefully about what she did to Kate. Because what she did was not only blaming him for his past experiences, but also the cruelty of digging into the wounds of a victim. Momoka and Aya leave, leaving Tsubasa alone to cry and think about everything. She remembered the moment that day, when she blamed Kade, and he apologized to her for making her feel uncomfortable and disgusted. But Kade couldn't take the blame anymore. He said that Tsubasa should have told him right away if that was what she really thought. He said that she could only say that because she had never experienced it, and asked her not to make him talk about it anymore. Tsubasa began to realize how bad Kade felt, and she cried silently inside, knowing that there was no way she could forgive herself. Meanwhile, Kade was working at the cafe, and Ryo complimented him for learning quickly. She thought that he would need more time to get used to everything, but he was really skillful. Kade tells Ryo that she is a great teacher, and she replies that that is all for today. Later, when Ryo gets home, she lies on her bed, seemingly naked. Feeling flustered, she recalls the moment Kade confessed his feelings to her. It made her heart flutter, and she never thought he would say that so suddenly. She tried to avoid it that day, but then, every time their eyes met, Kade would turn away, seemingly feeling embarrassed about it. She wonders why this keeps happening. Suddenly, a guy walks in and asks her if something is wrong, and it seems like they had some intimate moments before. She replies that he is just a part-time employee of the shop, and it seems like he has feelings for her. The boy asked her if he was the same age as her, and she replied that he was just a high school student, albeit a cute one. But she thought of him as her younger brother or nephew. The boy reminded her not to play with the pure heart of a high school student, saying that she could only handle practical relationships. She argued that she wasn't playing around at all. She said that the part-time employee was a really nice guy, but she didn't know if she had messed up the relationship between an employer and an employee. Anyway, she understood that she needed to be careful from now on. The next day, Kade asked her to show him how to make coffee again, and she helped him step by step correctly. She thought to herself that he didn't complain at all, which proved that he was really a nice guy. But she wasn't sure if she should continue pretending like he never confessed his feelings after that. Kade made her a cup of coffee and asked if she could have a taste. She took a sip and responded that it was better than before. Kade thanked her with a confused expression, making it hard for Ryo to ignore her cute expression. She told him that that was enough for today, and he thanked her for helping him learn more. After that, Kate asked her if she had a moment. And when she asked what he needed, he apologized for saying something weird last time. She pretended not to know and asked what he meant. Kate brought up the part where he confessed that he liked her. Rio felt bored and smiled fakely, wondering why he brought it up again. She asked if it was really weird, knowing that he liked her made her happy. Rio wished he could just change the subject, but Kate bluntly said that he meant it in a romantic way when he confessed his feelings to her. She was surprised to hear him say that, and his bluntness overwhelmed her. But then Kate added that he understood that she wasn't looking for a romantic relationship and also just saw him as a child, so he didn't expect any response from her, just wanted to let her know. Rio realized that she couldn't avoid this, and felt that he was too young to understand how selfish the words he said were to just let her know. She wondered why people were like that, and why they confessed their feelings even though they knew it wouldn't work. If they hadn't said it, she might have been able to maintain a good relationship. And this brought back bad memories for her. Now, she told him that she was sure that what he felt now wasn't love. Kate didn't understand what she said until she said that he didn't know anything about her. After saying that, Kate realized that she was right about him not knowing anything about her. Then she asked him why he thought it was love. Was it because she was his type, or because she treated him well, or did he like older women? He gulped, and she waited for him to speak. Finally, Kate said that from her perspective, he seemed like a child, and she might think he didn't know anything. And maybe she was just showing him her work side. But he reasoned that it was still a part of her, and he felt she was a warm and wonderful person. He was attracted to her personality, not because she was the ideal type or anything. He didn't know how she felt about him. So he apologized for being a little rude, because he had taken her feelings for granted. Rio then spoke up that she wasn't as wonderful as he thought, and that she was glad he liked her. But what she meant was that he might be misunderstanding his feelings. She reiterated that he didn't need to expect a response from her to his confession, but that she thought he was a really good boy and she wanted him to be happy in a normal way. Kate wished she could stop at this point, because he didn't want to be denied his normal feelings again. He decided to speak up first, telling her that a lot of things had happened to him in the past, making him afraid of women, especially older ones. He started to break out in a cold sweat and couldn't stop shaking just thinking about a woman touching him. But he felt at peace when Rio touched him, and instead of being scared, he felt relieved. He started to think that maybe he was okay now, so he considered her special. Rio seemed to have understood something, so she called his name. Kate said that even if it was just a little, he felt happy and his heart started to beat fast. He felt very happy, and if it wasn't love, he didn't know what these feelings were. Moreover, if she said that he didn't know anything about her, it made him want to know more. Rio listened to his feelings, while Kate apologized to her for saying such selfish things and making her feel burdened. But to him, this love was a normal and precious thing that he had finally found. So he hoped she wouldn't say it was just a misunderstanding. Rio had her own worries, because all the boys she had met so far were just friends in name only. In the end, they often chalked up their obsession with her to love, and their desire to marry her just because the time they spent with her was considered an investment. If she refused, they would blame her for wasting their years. However, Rio knew that Kate wasn't like that, but she still wanted to teach him something. So she asked Kate if he was free tomorrow. Kate replied that he had no classes and was completely free. Hearing this, she said that the store would also be closed and she was thinking of going shopping. She asked him if he wanted to come along, and Kate replied that he didn't mind, but asked what that had to do with the current conversation. Then, to his surprise, Rio suggested going on a date all day tomorrow, and she told Kate to meet her in front of the store at 11 a.m. Just like that, Kate arrived at the meeting place on time, and wondered what was going on, since he had absolutely no idea what was going on in her head. Soon after, Rio appeared in a beautiful and comfortable dress, and she saw that Kate had arrived before the appointed time. Kate sensed something unusual about Rio's atmosphere as he wished her a good morning. They started their date by going shopping, and she thanked Kate for carrying her bag. When they finished shopping, Rio said that they should go somewhere more private. She took Kate to the amusement park. They rode the Ferris wheel together. The awkward feeling of riding the Ferris wheel with a girl for the first time in his life made Kate's heart beat faster. Rio explained that the reason she asked him out today was because if they meet outside of work, they won't have to worry about a work relationship anymore, but about a relationship between a man and a woman. If Kate wanted to know more about it, she asked him if he really liked her in a romantic way. Then kiss her right now. Kate was shocked by such a sudden request, while Rio remained calm as usual. He wondered why she said that so suddenly, and why he was so worried about it. Because, if he liked her in a romantic way, then he shouldn't hesitate to touch or kiss her. But now, Kate clenched his fists, wondering why he was always unable to do things that people considered normal. Rio said that his current expression was not what a guy should have when the girl he liked asked him about a kiss. If he felt stiff and a little scared, she explained that the reason he couldn't do it might not be because of embarrassment or anxiety. Keith asked how she knew, and she confirmed that she had invited him out because she wanted to talk to him without the constraints of an employer-employee relationship. Keith was confused when he heard Rio mention that he used to be afraid of grown women. She realized that he was carrying quite a burden. And falling in love with a mature woman he could approach normally made him think he was returning to normal. If he knew that she had understood it correctly, she would have clearly said that it was not love, but friendship, respect, and intimate trust. Love could be classified as liking, but if he didn't see the other person for who they were, he couldn't call it love. Keith asked if his feelings for her were respect and trust, and she replied that she would be happy if that were the case. But he hesitated when she asked for a kiss, so she thought he had an answer for that. Keith received a reasonable answer from a real adult, and those words seemed to wake him up, stabbing straight into his heart. In the end, he felt like nothing had changed, which made him cry. Rio felt worried and wondered what he should do now, as it seemed like she had hurt his feelings. Then, Rio began to share with him about an event from his past, that during high school he would not be able to move forward. The school handled it better and he had friends who supported him. While Keith was telling her about it, he must have thought he would be pushed back. 2 lines of tears fell as he mentioned the 3 tragic years that had passed for him. His hands were shaking and he was always scared in those moments. Keith couldn't stop talking and his tears still couldn't stop flowing. He always felt like there was an arm pulling him into the darkness. She couldn't believe how complicated and dark Keith's past was. Keith said that after that incident, one of his high school teachers told him he was lucky, and that the teacher was jealous of him for having had the experience with such a beautiful woman. Keith was shocked and confused by the statement. Rio shook his head, affirming that both the teacher and the perpetrator were bad people. Keith felt himself being overwhelmed by pain and fear, wondering if he was still normal, and if this was really something to be jealous of. He realized over time that if he continued to be stuck in this mindset, he would never be able to move forward. Keith was determined that he would not change, and he did not want to. After sharing everything with Rio, he felt the need to apologize for telling her such a disgusting story. But Rio stopped him, saying that it was not disgusting. She now understood the burden Keith was carrying. She understood the meaning of his statement that love was normal and precious, and he had found it in her. Keith felt that it was okay if this was just a misunderstanding, and also okay if it was temporary. He longed to live a happy life, without fear, and to be loved like everyone else. He didn't want to hide anything from the person he liked. It was the normality he had always longed for, but in the end it only brought tears. Rio asked him, "What is normal?" Because everyone, including her, used this word naturally, but she wondered who was actually considered normal. Previously, she had told him that she had no intention of getting married or falling in love. But in matters like that, they became a burden when one grew up. She had given Keith a handkerchief and said that what had happened in the past must have caused some kind of trauma. But there were many people who still considered a grown woman, without any special circumstances, not wanting to get married as abnormal. Even though it was nothing that people expected, ultimately only Keith can measure what is normal for him. Keith wipes away his tears. While Rio tells him that it is his choice to move forward, hold on to the past, or throw it all away. No matter how he lives his life, knowing whether it is normal or not is not important. He slowly calms down and asks Rio if she is afraid of being different from everyone else. She replies that maybe it is because she is an adult. She explains to Keith that adults have lived longer than him, and he is still in the middle of his journey. So it is okay if he is uncertain or scared, even if he makes many mistakes. She advises him not to be bound by the concept of normal, because she is sure that there is more to it than that. She also said that he wasn't at fault for what he had experienced, but the fault was with the perpetrator. Nothing more, nothing less. And no matter what anyone said to him in the future, he shouldn't forget that. Keith cried his eyes out, and soon their trip was over. Rio thanked him for accompanying her today. Keith said that he was the one who should be thanking her, and that he was truly sorry for causing her trouble. He bowed his head and thanked her for everything she had said. Hearing this, she felt relieved and told Keith that if it weren't for him, she wouldn't have spent time on this in the first place. She ended up not being able to reciprocate their feelings, and the reason she wanted to have a serious conversation with him was because they had a relationship of trust. She felt that building this kind of relationship was much more difficult than romantic feelings, at least for her. However, after seeing Keith so straightforward yesterday, she once again thought about how wonderful it was to take care of someone. She felt happy to have this rare experience for the second time in her life. Keith asked her about the first time. And she smiled and replied that it was when her sister brought her fiancé home, and she looked so happy. Keed was captivated by her smile. And she suggested meeting again at the cafe as manager and employee. After that, they said goodbye to each other, and on the way back, Keed realized that Rio was really a wonderful person. He received many precious words from her, and felt that he did not deserve them. It seemed that his feelings for her were not love, and he had made many mistakes and messed up everything. But at least, it wasn't meaningless, because the feelings he felt weren't meaningless. Keed wiped his tears and remembered Rio's words again. For a moment, his ears hurt a little at the thought that something might have happened to Rio. He thought that it might also be an unconscious bias. And decided to ignore it, continuing to walk forward. He wondered if he had accidentally hurt someone with his words and feelings. Meanwhile, Rio welcomed someone into the cafe, even though it was closing time. She recognized him as her brother-in-law. He asked her if she was okay. And he just replied that everything was fine. Rio asked him if he saw the sign that said the cafe was closed, and he replied that the lights were still on, so he came here just to see her. She asked if he wanted something to drink. And he thanks her, saying he's glad to see she's okay. Rio mentions that she was thinking about her sister today. But her husband replies that he doesn't really miss her, because she's never left his mind. As it turns out, Rio's sister has passed away. The next day, Tsubasa brought a glass of juice to apologize to Aya for what happened earlier. She thought a lot about it. And also realized that her words and actions were terrible. She understood that there were many things that were difficult to say, but Aya was straightforward and clear with her. She was very grateful for that. Aya accepted Tsubasa's apology, and said that she really liked Tsubasa's honesty. She also apologized for being a third party, but was the one who advised Tsubasa to learn about Cade's past, only to start blaming her. After that, Tsubasa admitted that she understood that what Aya said was for her own benefit. And they hugged to reconcile after the previous argument.